So I imagine that some of you can intuit that I'm beginning this slide, this talk, this topic somewhat differently than the previous three. And if you ask yourself how you can tell that, I would suggest that you're accessing the mind of babies, the part of your mind that's active during REM sleep. And what you're beginning to be hopefully realizing is the source from which all the drawings in emergence come. And all the drawings are the source of all the discoveries, the drawings themselves. This is important to think that most people, when they make discoveries, they think they discover things from their minds, their logical minds, things occur to them and so on. And then if they have an artistic bent to them, they then make a drawing to try and symbolically represent what they've discovered. For me, from the first drawing, and without knowing it, without becoming conscious that I was doing it, I have a sense of something which I don't understand. And for instance, that first drawing about the two that are one, which came from some years of meditating, and then one day I just came home and I drew the drawing. I had no idea what I was drawing. I simply allowed my mind to be as if I was a baby again without words. And although I wrote some words on the page, I wasn't thinking about what they meant. When I wrote them, I just drew. So now, when I am asking you if you sense what I'm like at the beginning of this talk, I am asking you to try to sense with that same part of your mind that all the drawings in emergence come from. This is beyond important. This is literally the key to unlocking everything that you could possibly know about life and other people and things, etc. Accessing that part of your mind, and while doing that, simultaneously setting aside that adult mind that figures things out. It's mostly not visual, it's mostly just simply parroting things we've been told are true. And I am encouraging you to become completely true to yourself, to be in one of two states, either the state of not knowing, which is most of what we are, and this talk will be about, mostly not knowing, without any shame or guilt or feelings of inadequacy, and what it's like to have those few moments where it's as if we've been walking through a huge forest and it's night, and then we come into a clearing and we discover there's a full moon, and we can see everything in that beautiful, shimmery, silvery light, just for a moment. And then as we walk on, we go back into the forest and it's night, and all the feelings that we have which go along with that when we're honest and realize how little we actually know. So, all that said, if you can intuit what I'm like, I'm in a rather serious mood. And it may take you till the end of this, or mostly to the end of this talk, to realize that serious mood isn't about teaching you. It is about revealing a piece of my life, my history, which occurred in this early time of emergence, which when I think back on it, it's unpleasant. It was a hard time for me. And it took a while for me to even realize what had happened to me. Um, I'm smiling because knowing most of you, I'm raising um, questions, curiosity, which is what these talks are intended to do. So, the topic. Take a moment to consider what you would be like, what your life would be like, how life would change for you if you were perfectly conscious. If everything that was around you that you could sense, you could sense it all and put it together completely and see it perfectly clearly, and as if the entire forest and the night itself disappeared, and now you are in bright sunlight and can see in some magical way every single tree that used to be in the forest, and you can see it being removed. Yes, I am a complicated person, and I don't teach things simply. But that's because I am teaching in the language of babies. I'm trying to get you to picture these things as I say them. Because without the pictures, you might be able to perfectly say back all the words I said, but it won't have any meaning. Not to you. So, now this is going to connect to what we have been doing and what we're about to, in coming talks, look at. And we have been looking at three different drawings. The first manual cover, the thought bubbles drawings, and the green ball drawing. And we've been talking about the mind. And although the drawings said personality on them, in the era that I did this, the mind and personality were the same thing to me. And then over time, I walk into a clearing one day and realize, no, they're not. The mind is like the organization, the storage, it's like invisible cabinets and shelves and so on. But it's not. They're not separate. It's an interrelated system, and all of the life experiences we have, they, according to our personalities, they get sorted into these compartments in the mind, and then, and this is what this talk is about, and then we cannot see all of them at the same time. Like you couldn't open all the kitchen, the doors in your kitchen cabinets all at once. You could open them all, but could you look in all the cabinets all at once? No. And we don't think about that. Our kitchen cabinets are a system that organizes all the things in our kitchen, but they are the drawers, excuse me, the drawers, the cabinets that you need. Some of you need to get on a step stool to reach up into, and you put the stuff that you don't use very often in those cabinets, hopefully. But even with all the doors open, there is no way to see all of what's in those cabinets. And basically, that's the way our minds function and our ability to be conscious. Now, the mind is like those cabinets, and personality is like what's in those cabinets. And personality is like, what kinds of spices do you have in a section? What do you like? You're not going to have things in there that you really don't like, or no one in your family likes, or whatever. And if you open your silverware drawer, people don't usually think about it. But were you to open your silverware drawer and then open a friend's silverware drawer, and etc., if you could, and you were to do a little inventory of people's silverware drawers, you would find that you can tell a lot about their personalities, who they are, by the kind of silverware they have. My silverware, it's not really silverware, it's flatware, it's whatever, stainless steel. But my silverware took me years to find, because I was buying things largely influenced by what I thought other people would think when they came to my house. Oh, God. Yeah, And then eventually, actually, and it's not that long ago, when I was sitting with Maria one morning and we were talking, having our supervision and whatever in a restaurant, I looked at the flatware in the restaurant and I fell in love with it. I went, wow, this is the flatware I've been looking for all my life in a restaurant. Okay, and it wasn't really even that fancy a restaurant, and I'm not that fancy a person. It fit me. Simple. No extra designs on it. No. Sturdy, but, no adornments, nothing. And so I looked at the back. Then I did what I normally do. Maria does this too, which is I then was on a mission to find it. I found it and I bought it. So were you to look in my silverware drawer, my forks and spoons and so on, you would find flatware that exactly fits my personality and who you know me to be. Nothing extra. Very functional. But there's a certain beauty in the simplicity. I love that. Beauty in the simplicity. So, the topic, again, is, what would your life be like if you were perfectly conscious? Can you see that you have not been conscious of that the silverware in people's silverware drawers is a personality test that can reveal so much about them? So much about them. Even just the organization in the drawer. Okay. So now, this is what we are going to look at. But how? So, in the series of drawings that you're going to see come, on the screen in this talk, we're going to start with a frame, and you're going to look at it in a minute, which it is mostly blocked out with these boxes. Each box has a label in it, and there are 5 different size boxes, large to very small. And as you can see, there's a title, Why Can't We Be Perfectly Conscious? And the labels on these 5 boxes are the labels that tell you what part of personality is in play. So in the opening drawing, all 5 parts of her personality are in play. And in the center you can see a tiny little something that is hiding behind those 5 boxes. And that little something is what we are conscious of when we are in a normal state of mind and not reliving an injury and not excessively stressed. Normal. Hopefully you're like that right now. Maybe you're probably a little bit more conscious than normal because you haven't a clue what the heck the old white man is going to say to you in this talk. What is this? Get on with it. Some of you who have been around Emergence a while know that I am doing this purposely. That building what some of you might call frustration over me not getting to the point is a way to get you to have your mind open. And it is frustrating. And that's every person who makes a discovery. This is a part of where they start. They have genuine frustration. They don't know what it means. They want to get to the point. But we can't, because we're not perfectly conscious. Because we have to remove these 5 parts of us one at a time in order to get to what's hiding beneath those filters. So now, there are 5, and you will learn this, there are 5, and only 5, metafractal patterns which define our personalities. The mind is not the content, like the cabinets in our kitchen are not the content of the kitchen. They're how we organize it, store it, etc. And yes, they do reveal a lot about us, but they're not our personality. So, just simply to name them, The first part of personality is our mind-body orientation, which is determined by our preference for how quickly or slowly we process life. If you are a quick processor, you process it through this brain, and you're called mind first. And if you process it with this brain, the gut and so on, then you are called body first. You process sensation first, hear of your body first. You process thought and words first, logic if you're mind first. And speed determines that. Now, we'll learn about this. It doesn't have a meaning yet to some of you, and to some of you, you know this very well. That's the first one, and that filters out half of what we could see were we perfectly conscious. Because, why? Because everything in emergence is a tipping point, and because there are only two possibilities. If we were perfectly aware in the half that we are, I'm mind first, then at best, on my best day, the other half, the body first half, would be blocked out. So, this is the first thing to know about personality, that these 5 patterns, beginning with mind-body orientation, act as filters. It's kind of like when we're in the kitchen and I'm saying, okay, so can you pick a cabinet to look into, tell me what's inside? Okay, and in this particular one, I'm imagining myself looking in one of my mug cabinets. I don't know why I have so many mugs. I live by myself, but I like coffee and tea and things like that, and I just like mugs. But I often think about when I open it, God, it's so extra complicated. I should get rid of some of these, give them away or something. Because the truth is, I use one mug every morning, the same mug every day. And it is a mug that my sister Teresa gave me some years ago. She has no idea. And I'm not sure she'd even believe me. But I use it every single morning and think about her every single morning when I get up. So, if you look at one of your cabinets, you cannot see what's in the other ones, even with the doors open. And if you were to imagine a kitchen with only 2 cabinets, you could look at one, but even with the door open in the other one, unless you kind of sneak a peek, which means you're not clearly looking at the one right in front of you, you're only going to see one half of what's in your 2 cabinets. And that's the same way with personality and mind-body orientation. So what we're looking at in front of us, though, is what if all 5 filters are in play, which they are every day. And so the first slide we're looking at is all 5 filters are in play, and the little piece in the center is what's left. If we were perfectly aware on that day of what's left. And we're not, it's never perfectly aware. And but let's just say that. Now I want you to look at that, whatever that is in the beginning of that, little grayish, blackish something or other, and I want you all to begin to do this as an exercise. I want you to have a piece of paper or write it on your phone or something, but I want you to write down what you think that piece of a picture is. What is it? What is it about? What is your sense of it? And just simply try to really do this. Don't just look at it for a minute and go, oh gee, I can't tell. No, don't do that. Look at that opening, the place where there are nothing, the personality is not filtering out, blocking what we might see if we were perfectly conscious. That little piece, what is that little piece? Look at it. Take a minute. Use the mind of your mind, the mind of a baby. Use that part of yourself to try and sense. Now, the baby doesn't have words, so the sense is more general, vague sense. But a baby, say when they're learning about food, the baby tastes the food and either swallows it and likes it or spits it out. I love that about babies, right? They're the greatest food testers in the world. Either they like it or they don't. It's not complicated. So now, sense what's in this little spot and try to sense, is this good or bad? And that's childish words, good or bad. But so what? The mind of a baby, good or bad? Is there something there that's important or unimportant? Is it empty or full? My hint is that it's about my life. Hence the seriousness as I began. It's about my life, and it's a significant event. Probably in the top 10 of my whole life. Curious? That little schmudge, whatever, schmidgen of something. Yeah. Okay, so now if we look at the next drawing, and if we think about that, the smallest filter in personality is the last one to be in that nested sequence, gender identity. If we were to look at that, we were to lift it, remove it, that's what we're doing here. And if we were to remove it, we see a little bit more of the drawing. And I'm not sure that you can yet tell at all what it is, but I want you to now try that same exercise again. Try to intuit what's there, and then write something down. And now you see a little bit more detail. So that drawing is still a smudgy kind of a black thing there, but that drawing shows you something. It shows you more than double what you were looking at before, and that would be what it would be like if you had no gender identity, if that filter didn't exist in us. It does, but that's how much of it blocks out of any event that we might be thinking about seeing, trying to discover, etc. Okay, gender identity. Now, if we remove the box above that, which is decision trees, there are 4 decision trees. 4 decision tree qualities, ways that we make decisions about how to meet our needs. When we feel needy, and we discern where it is, and is it in somebody we care about, or is it in ourselves? And when we discern, what kind of needs those are, the broad general categories, which social priorities describe. After we decide that, we come to this moment where we're trying to decide what to do about it. And we each make decisions in one of 4 ways. And yes, there is a sequence, and we move through that sequence in different times. But there is a first way that we make decisions. You'll learn about this. That's what the decision tree is. What's your first way, what's your last way, and so on. So since there are 4, the 3 that you're not using, that obscures 3/4 of what you might see. And so when I remove this blocks, the decision tree box, the amount that you now see of this, whatever this is, whatever it's beginning to reveal, the amount of this is now what would be there if the last 2 filters in personality did not exist. If you didn't have a gender identity, and if you didn't have a limit on how you made decisions. Okay. So now, here you are, number 3, write down what you think is there, what is this about, how could this possibly be such an important thing in my life, and now I'm going to add something. What's behind these filters? Is it an important thing in your life? Now that is a mystery. How could it be? You have no idea what's behind there. How could it be important? I'm going to predict that when you realize what's behind this, you'll realize why it is so important. Hopefully. Anyway, so we now have removed 2 of the 5 filters and realize that they are in an order, almost like 5 sheets of cellophane. And I took off one and then I took off the next one. Now we have 3 left. 3 sheets of cellophane, all different colors, well, grayish. And each one filters out part of what's behind there. So now we're going to go to the middle filter in human nature, social priorities. And I mentioned what that is. This is when we feel neediness, which is really when we feel an ambivalence between 2 different things we can't decide, and that feeling of ambivalence between those 2 things, neediness, how do we know what kind of thing it is that we're trying to meet? And babies develop a series of 4 ways that they sense it. Sensation is the first one. Organization is the second. You can see a baby organizing their fingers when they touch them one at a time with toes, right? They're learning how to organize the things that they sense in their world. Understanding, which is the third one that develops, second year of life, where they're assigning meanings to the things that they have learned to sense. And then the third and fourth year of life, freedom, which is the ability to alternate between connecting to beings like mom, right, in which you don't really see the rest of the world, or connecting to the world and not beings. And that freedom to go and connect to people and not pay attention to the world, that's the fourth thing. So comfort, neatness, understanding, and freedom. Sensation, organization, meaning, and social connection. All right, so if we remove this box, you can notice it's quite a bit bigger. And why? Because if you were to look at the outline of that box and the 3 spaces that have been revealed so far, if we were to look at that and then pull back and look at the whole drawing, you'd realize that that amount of our consciousness, that amount of our what we see in life, amounts to 25% of what we might see were we perfectly conscious. And that idea is pretty significant. There are 4 social priorities, and if we completely blocked out that 25% because we blocked out all 4, then we would see nothing. But we don't. We have one that automatically is at the top of the pile, the priority. In me, it's understanding and meaning, assigning meaning to the things I sense. And that one leaves that space open. But the other 3 block out the 3/4 of what would be in that corner, that quadrant of our screen. That's a lot to say. But just really do it from the mind of a baby. If I take this away, now some of the seriousness of the beginning of this, I imagine it's apparent. Now you don't fully know what you're seeing yet. I suspect some of you can guess that whatever this thing is, it's pretty damaged. Yeah, tears and brokenness and bending and yeah. And you can see in the background there's a little table and there's a doorway and a wall, and it looks like dirty snow on the ground, which it is. There, I'm giving some of it away. But you can see this. It's not hard for you to see. And even as I think about it, I think about how my life changed when this picture was taken. So, now, we are left with two of the filters. Character type, which is number 2 in the sequence of what we have, and mind-body orientation, which is number 1. So you can see how they change size. Each one decreases how much we can see. And if you look at character type, it takes up all the space that the social priorities, a decision tree, gender identity, and the little piece that we could see, if we're not having a bad day, right? Character type cuts just as much out as all those other things. It cuts out 25% of the entirety of what we might see if we were perfectly conscious. So, what does it look like underneath that drawing? I think now you're beginning to really tell what is here and how serious this picture is. And so, it's 2005 and it's a Friday morning and I am driving to work. There's nothing unusual. It's very sunny. It's very cold, very sunny. And I am looking forward to my 14-hour day at my office because I love seeing people. I love talking with people. I love discovering things about their lives with them. And I go on a little part of a clover leaf to get onto the parkway, and there's black ice. I get on the clover leaf and I'm about to go across an overpass over the highway that I came from. In between the sides of the parkway, where each side is 2 lanes, in between is grass, dirt, and in the center of that median is a series of steel poles with loops, and through the loops are a steel cable, one steel cable. So that's what divides the highway at this point. And I get on and there's a car in front of me moving quite slowly, and I go to move to the left lane to pass. Now realize I am not going very fast, I just got on. And the car, although you might not know yet, is not a very fast car. Might look like it from the look of it. Well, not this picture, but when it was new. It's not a very fast car. But I go to pass the car. And so, before I tell you what happened next, I want to take away the last of the 5 filters, the mind-body orientation filter, so that you can see the whole picture as I tell you this. Now already, I know that this is an unpleasant experience, but this is about consciousness. And quite honestly, had I been perfectly conscious that day, this picture wouldn't exist. But I'm not. And neither are you. Even though we expect ourselves to be that at times, like people learning things about emergence, and you expect you're going to learn it in a sitting, but that's not going to happen. So, turning the page one more time. And now you can clearly see that this car is destroyed, but I want you to look at it. You see, that little Miata, I was in it. I was in it. And as I went to pass that car in the left lane, I went across the bridge and there was black ice. I couldn't see it. I wasn't conscious of it. And I also wasn't going very fast. Probably at the most, I don't know, 35 miles an hour, maybe. The car spun. And as it spun, it went up onto the grass. And as it went up onto the grass, the nose of the car went underneath the steel cable, in between the first pair of steel poles. As it did, it kept going forward, my car, and me. And as it did, it took down the steel poles. But the steel cable cut off everything above the windshield, as you can see. There's a little bit left, but not much. Can you see where that steel cable would have taken off my head. Now you need to realize that as that car spun, I was not aware. It was sudden, it was shocking. The car spun. There's a blankness in my mind. I cannot see what happened. I can imagine like looking from the top, but it's a reconstruction. The car spun and the nose of the car went toward the grass, and then it went up onto the grass, and then the nose of the car went under the steel cable, and the steel cable began to saw off whatever was above the hood. So, what's happening to me as this is going on? What's happening to me is that I do not understand how I have now ended up, and I am lying on the console. I'm down, lying, and my face is inches away from the face of the CD player in the dashboard. I'm looking up, and as I look up in this odd position, time is going so slowly that it doesn't exist, almost. There's no noise. Now that can't be, because the car is obviously taking down poles and coming apart. The glass is in the air. I don't talk about this very much, can you tell? It's not pleasant. And yet it's one of the most important events of my life. And yours, hopefully, you're realizing that I should have died that day. That steel cable should have cut off my head. I had a seatbelt on. It failed. I had an airbag. It failed. Those two things would have helped me upright, and it would have sawed off my head in a blink of an eye. Both of those things failed. I somehow managed, not by my own will, to end up lying across that console. And as I looked up where there used to be a windshield, and there was none anymore, and this is the part that's hardest to talk about, in that perfect silence, in that place where time didn't exist anymore, I saw what looked like it looked like the outlines that you see in Jewish texts for the Shekinah, what Christian people call angels, messengers. It looked like a huge man with folded wings following the car. I have never been so unafraid in my whole life. Unafraid. Now, you need to know the two that are one exists for what I believe I saw. So there is a piece of me that believes I literally saw the angel of death who was coming for me. And there's the metaphoric part of me that believes that my mind created that image so that I could understand what was happening. And I don't care which it is. It doesn't matter. I saw it. This was the picture in my mind. My mind was in the state that it was in when I was born. I'm not surprised about that as I say it to you. It says we're going backwards to something before we were born. And why wouldn't our minds rewind and go into a state that we were in that early time when things were just shadows and they weren't scary. It was a calmness. In the end, my car went about, 150 feet, took down 5 poles. There's snow on the ground. And I can remember looking at moving from what I had seen in through the windshield in the sky against those clouds, to what I saw inches away from my face, where the faceplate of that CD player, plastic, glass, whatever it was, plastic I imagine, was embedded with shards of glass. The entire thing was filled with shards of glass. As I started to pick myself up slowly, I looked over at the passenger seat, and I had my black leather briefcase, and I looked at it, and the leather was filled with shards of glass embedded in the leather. I got out of the car. I took my briefcase. I remember standing in the snow. It wasn't very deep, but it covered my shoes. And cars, one by one, many, many cars slowed down, seeing me, to ask if I was all right. In this moment, I can feel their kindness. Now, to this day, I don't know why I can feel these things. Why was I so conscious? Why, in that moment, where I should have just been in shock, oh my God, I just should have died, somehow didn't die, and here I am standing in the snow in that median watching cars slow down and stop and ask me if I'm okay, and I can feel the kindness. Why am I saying this is important about your life? You see, because this wouldn't exist. None of this. I would never have known you. You would have never known me. You wouldn't have even known I'd lived, let alone died. But you do, as you're watching this. And you do because that day, in a way I don't ever understand, and I don't try, and yet it has meaning. On that day, I was more conscious than I have ever been in my life, of being human, of how fragile our lives are, how quickly we can go. On a day that was so perfectly sunny, and the snow was beautiful, and I was happily going to work. And then this. So now, as you look at the car, I want you to try to look a little bit more closely, because you can see how those steel poles bent in the car. You can see the dent, oh my God. But mostly, just look at how low that top, what used to be the top of the windshield, the frame, how it's bent at almost the height of the dashboard. How somehow that cable sawed off the metal of the top of the hood, somehow. Yeah. So if I was perfectly conscious that day, I wouldn't have had the accident. Is that what you're thinking? You see, I don't have an answer to that kind of question. Nor do I believe it was just simply meant to be. I don't have that belief either. It has great meaning to me because I'm mind first, because I look to assign meanings to the things I sense. That's my main social priority. So now, as we finish this talk, and as I imagine this has been difficult for you, and for that I apologize. I wish there was an easier way to teach. I wish there was a way to teach without you having to suffer in order to come to the realization. I so wish there was, but there is not. I wish that in the suffering, none of you blamed yourselves for your inability to be perfectly conscious, to get it right away. I wish that you had none of that false belief inside you. I so wish that. But what I'm trying to show you in this talk is how having a personality, our humanity, having a personality is what prevents us from seeing the vast majority of what we might see Were we perfectly conscious, meaning were we to not be human? Were we to not have any of those filters obscuring, what we might see? What if we could see into every cabinet in our kitchen simultaneously? I can't even imagine. At best, I can imagine switching very fast. Or mentally knowing. I could do that. Mostly not. I'm so old I forget what cabinet has what stuff in it. And I don't mind. So this is what we will learn about, those 5 filters. And these are the content of the mind, what goes in there, how they're arranged, how they're organized. And they are also what prevents us from seeing much of what's around us. You might ask me, what's the point then? Why are we learning about this stuff if all it does is it makes you unable to see? And this is really the most important point of all. You see, knowing I have a mind-body orientation, not just knowing about it, not just I know there's a gas pedal when I'm 7 years old, I know about it, but I only learn what it is when I am 16 years old, when I learn to use it. You can know about mind-body orientation, but it doesn't have any meaning until you literally experience what you can see and what you cannot see. And if you have a close friend or a partner or a parent who is the opposite mind-body orientation from you, then you really learn this. And why is it important? Because if you are mind first and your partner is body first, then think of how those 2 filters come into play when you talk. What you talk about is what you can see, not what you can't see. Your partner, the opposite. What do they talk about? What they can see, which is what you cannot see. Now think of the miracle that we can even talk to each other at all. And that's just one filter. But what does knowing about this mean? It means we have an almost magical way to see past some of our humanity. To understand our nature is to see more of our nature, to understand it, not just to know about it or be able to name it. My character type, I am you first. And that's the piece of it that's important, because the other half, the me first part, is invisible to me. But you see, I know about it. And when I sit with somebody who is me first, for instance, you, Clancy, when you're watching this, or you, Jess, when I think about this, you see, I love it when you are right side up and me first, because that's the piece I normally can't see. But because I know about it, because I really can sense it, I can see it by looking at you. You help me to see the parts that I by myself cannot see, ever. I cannot see them. So I can learn from you, and you can learn from me. And that's just character type. Right. I can learn from anybody who has organization, neatness, as their highest social priority, because mine is understanding. I assign meaning to the things I sense. That's what I can see, that's what I talk about. And what is a person who has neatness and understanding as their highest priority? Well, they want to see how the things they sense, they want to see it in an organized way. They want to have a system. Well, I like that. But giving something a system, the things I can see, then gives it meaning. And we have 2 different ways of seeing the same material. So that when I sit with a particular man that I've seen for some years who I've come to really like, and he's got a minority personality, OCD would be the dumb description in the diagnostic manual, but he is different. His personality so largely filters out the rest that he can only see and value organization in the system, and that's what he focuses on. Even with people. I've joked with him often that people are like keys on a piano to him. He doesn't see the people. But that's not much different from my minority personality because, I would have gotten the diagnosis of Asperger's or now autism spectrum level 2. And what does that mean? It means that I filter out everything except the meaning of things. Now, I'm not doing it now. And why not? Because I know. Because I know that pattern. I know that man's pattern. I know Clancy is body first. I know Sam is mind first. I know so many things about these patterns that it's as if they become translucent, that I can see through them a little, but then mostly I become infinitely interested in every person who is not like me. People who have a different mind-body orientation. Wow. Is that a personal experience? Well, I'm picturing my dad working with tools in the garage right now. My dad is body first. I'm mind first. I'm trying to figure out what he's doing. He's not figuring. He's making a tool because he didn't have it and he wanted to do something that day. He's making a tool on his old, oil-covered wood workbench. He's inventing a tool. Now it has a great meaning to me because I know inventing tools is one of the things that marks us as being intelligent. Inventing a tool instead of just copying. But I do not understand how he's doing that. I understand that he is doing it because he's body first. And his way of sensing the world and organizing it and assigning meaning, his way is to physically touch it and move it and reshape it and affect it. So I know my father so much more because I know I am mind first and he is body first, and through him I can understand the joy of tools and tool making. And this is the value in learning personality. At least our version of personality in emergence, where they're not logically arrived at, they just exist. And we don't just say they are and just accept it. We remain skeptical and look for more evidence. And we are not allowed to rule out any evidence and then say something is true, because that's a false way to do science. Currently, Maria and I are learning a great deal about mind-body orientation because her twins are less than a year old, and over the past months, we have discovered that they were born with the mind-body orientation. And it's amazing to me because Maria showed me a little video yesterday of her girls in high chairs, and the camera, she's filming it for our living textbook, and I imagine at some point you'll see that little video clip. And there's the mind first baby girl, Astrid, is in the foreground, and then back at an angle is the body first baby girl, Lissetti, and she's feeding them. She's alternating. Now, at some point in the beginning of the video, she points like this. Astrid, who is mind first, makes no notice of it, none whatsoever. But Lissetti, in the background, makes a hand just like that. After she looks at Maria's hand, she makes the hand, and she looks at her own hand. Lissetti is like my father at that workbench. She is learning to understand her world with the pieces she can be conscious of, which is physical sensation, her body being a part of that. This has been a long talk. Hopefully it's been meaningful. It certainly has for me. I feel it's important that you understand the value in what you're learning instead of just having some vague thought of, I'd like to know this stuff. I'd like to be able to help people more. Yes, that's true. But right now, there is no one else in the world but you, for me. Whoever is looking at this, I know that this is important, that you realize that. Personality is what prevents us from being perfectly conscious. And knowing the 5 patterns, the 5 meta-fractal patterns, mind-body orientation, character type, social priorities, decision trees, and gender identity, knowing those 5 things about yourself, and then being able to see them in others, and then being able to contrast and compare a 2 that are 1. Whatever you are, seeing the opposite in another is the only way that we become more conscious. Think about how important this is now. We must connect to each other, or we see almost nothing of the world. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so happy that you're allowing me to have these talks with you.